Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. This is a great segue, Max, to talk about the roadmap, right, for
No,
Hyperliquid.
exactly.
And I think, we are incredibly excited to see that Hyperliquid is also moving towards not just, perpetual futures, but spot as well as prediction markets. It's actually, I believe, the only liquid exposure that investors could have for prediction markets because most of the investments right now are in the private equity markets via
Yeah.
venture capital, right? So, in the names of Kalshi and Polymarkets and the others as well, they're raising seed and Series A capital from VCs to build over prediction markets. So, Leo, walk us through the future of Hyperliquid, right? What are some of the positive directions that you're seeing right now for Hyperliquid?
You mean like what are the most exciting things coming in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think HIP free markets have been kind of the hot topic so far because
And walk the audience through what's HIP3 before delving into the details.
sure. So basically HIP free is kind of a primitive within Hyperliquid and especially Hypercore, which is like the layer one and where like all the
Blockchain. Yeah.
trading is happening, which allows deployers, third parties who stake for 500,000 hype. I think it's valued like 30 million, 40 million, something like this now. And once you stake this amount as a third party, then you can deploy like perps markets for anything basically. So it means that like on Hyperliquid, you're trading BTC perp, ETH perps, or like derivatives on BTC, ETH, and many other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah,
But
only crypto, right? Hyperliquid Core, I believe. Yeah.
I think there is gold, but that's pretty much it. Like not much. With HIP free, anyone can deploy any kind of derivatives like on Hypercore. So it means that like you set the oracle yourself, meaning
Mhm.
that if you define the oracle yourself, you can create a perp market for quite anything.
So you're basically, this is a good example, I think, of it being a kind of AWS of liquidity or
Yeah,
eBay for financial applications. So basically what you're saying is as long as an asset, even if it's not crypto, as long as it has a reliable price feed, developers or entrepreneurs can essentially build or launch their own perpetual market.
exactly.
Okay, cool.
Like I think that even if you can like list pretty much perp markets for anything, like there is not a fit for everything. But in case of financial markets, I think it makes tons of sense, especially for TradFi. So what it means is that
Yeah.
like if you want to list, like if you have like derivatives to perps for any type of stocks, commodities and everything, you can do it. So if you stake 500K hype and you decide to deploy the market, then you can have it. After that, deploying a market is not really hard in some ways because it's really about like having some capital to stake and basically having a robust oracle so that
Yeah.
like the market doesn't go like in weird ways and it's not manipulated and it's really sticky to the underlying and spot side of things. I think the hardest part is more on like having a lot of liquidity within your market and driving interest and users towards it. So what we've seen so far is that HRP free markets got a lot of success, especially thanks to TradeXYZ. So
Yeah.
TradeXYZ is the dominant HRP free deployer. I think now they have probably 90 or 95% market share. It has been built by Shoku, who is a guy who built units and built basically the spot side of Hyperliquid. He basically deployed BTC, ETH, Solana markets, and many others on Hyperliquid, which was not possible before. Before you were only able to trade perps. So thanks to him, we can trade like spot assets. And now we can trade, thanks to him and his team, and TradFi assets on the perp side of things. So it's a huge deal because he was able to market it properly, but mostly to attract a level of liquidity which is significant and allows like most people to trade without having like huge price impact or whatever, which makes the
Yeah.
UX very good. I
And
think, yeah, go ahead.
this opens the door as well, for 24/7 trading of real world assets, so it's also the convergence with tokenization. And I think this is also exciting for people that are potential hype investors or using the platform, because it makes it less tied to crypto specifically. It makes it a little
Yeah.
bit more agnostic. And in my view, that might be also part of the reason why it's also holding up well amidst a broader bear market, because even if people maybe loosen their interest in trading crypto assets, they're still able to trade other things such as commodities or pre-IPO markets, which we've seen gather a lot of attention as well. And as a result, the platform stays used, and that usage, as we talked about, feeds into more revenue and also stronger token performance. So I think this is also a way to make Hype a more diversified platform and also make it stronger during broader crypto bear markets. So it's really exciting, actually.
Yeah, this is
I
what
mean,
Jeff tells. He
Yeah,
says that like Hyperliquid is not a crypto company or whatever. Like the scope is finance, and it is using crypto rails to scale
yeah,
now. But it's not entitled to crypto, and the goal is to have something bigger. And I think what you mentioned is super real in the sense of like people like me, we've been trading crypto because we like it first, and then afterwards because this is where we got our edge. But it's really hard to get into, like TradFi exchanges, brokers, and deposits, and get the KYC or the KYB, and then like trade, and then the interface is awful, and then you pay tons of fees, and like stop. Like I mean, like something can get better, and also I think that people were investing a lot in altcoins because they didn't really get access to anything else. At least for
true.
like a lot of people in crypto. I
true.
mean, right now, like people are getting more and more experience, and they are navigating TradFi markets and crypto markets. But at the time, it was different. And now, giving the possibility to users and to traders to access other type of markets, and while trading in stablecoin and trading in crypto and self custody, like this is a big deal. Like this is massive. And I think this is what we've been dreaming of for a very long time. And now we have it. Yeah. Congrats to
And
Hyperliquid and Shoko for this.
And to give some crazy numbers, WTI crude oil right now on Hyperliquid represents 1.4% of the New York Mercantile Exchange. For Brent crude oil, this is 5.6% of the
That's
same
crazy.
exchange. And for silver, we're talking about 13% of the NYSE ARCA ETF for silver. So these are incredibly big numbers, and they're happening on the largest marketplace built on Hyperliquid called Trade.xyz, as Leo mentioned. So these are enormous numbers. We're talking about billions of dollars traded on a daily basis, and not just used by retail investors, right? We've seen even at the IPO of one of the most anticipated IPOs this year, Cerebras, the AI company. We've seen that some of the traders ahead of the IPO were actually having the Hyperliquid screen
Yeah.
to look at the pre-markets, right? So pre-markets are happening on Hyperliquid. And I think that's incredibly exciting. And of course, SpaceX is coming up very soon as well. And we should be anticipating that too. But yeah, I've been quite impressed with some of these real world assets. And I do think that the success of Hyperliquid is actually not a coincidence. And it's a learning from past attempts and past failures to launch around the clock decentralized venues that unfortunately failed. Some of them didn't pan out to have mainstream adoption like DYDX, but some of them also got shut down by regulators like Ether Delta, which was one of the largest decentralized exchanges for initial coin offering. So basically IPO for digital assets at the time built on Ethereum. So I do think that's exciting, right? It's a true financial innovation and not just a crypto story, which resonates a lot with Main Street and Wall Street.
Yeah. And I think we can expect much, much, much more, especially when it comes to pre-IPO markets.
Yeah.
So for people who don't really notice, TradeXYZ did deploy SpaceX markets, which allows traders on Hyperliquid to trade SpaceX before it gets listed on the Nasdaq and every venue. Why it is like quite a big deal is, to me, it's because like everything in TradFi is gatekept by like the big boys, and like it's the big money and everything. And when it comes to price discovery, like for example, like the price discovery or the raise of valuation over time of Anthropic or OpenAI or other companies is incredible. But as a retail users, you get access to it when it's like billions. It's a
Yeah.
it's not that, like, I would not say it's unfair. I mean, it really depends on the perspective, but still, I think like, some people have like a huge advantage, and I think that the line between like those big boys and the retail investor and trader, this line is getting blurry because of like everything's getting more open, everything getting on blockchain, everything getting tokenized or getting a perp derivatives for that. And I think the size of these kind of markets and opportunity is huge because it's not something that is really possible uh, at size and scale in TradFi. In TradFi, you have like what SPVs and stuff that allows you to invest before, like with like some group of people or with legal entities, something like that, I guess. But it's not like you don't have like an order book, and like the size is very limited and everything. Here with Hyperliquid, it's just like you're trading Bitcoin or Ethereum, like you can trade SpaceX even before it gets listed. Of course, there is like some challenges around like the number of shares and what happens with
Yeah.
like share split and these kind of behaviors, which can be very tricky. Also, when it comes to the Oracle and everything, but I think they've been very mindful of how they are doing it on the Oracle side of things. I think, like, for example, Venturals try to achieve it, but they got really challenged on the Oracle and really got like an approach that was not bad, but I think they ended up not having the liquidity and the people behind them to scale it. Where like Shoku and TradeXYZ and Unit, they're like just big guys, like they're legit. People know them for a
Yeah.
while. They have like a lot of capital to deploy, and just works.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think even if there's like some nuts and bolts that they still need to screw on properly, it's still a step forward in going on to democratize finance, right? Before this, there wasn't an option to do this at scale, like you mentioned, and now even if some of the things are not yet quite perfect, it is still a step in the right direction, and it will inevitably get there one day. Looking ahead as well, the one question, and I think we briefly touched upon this, but I think is potentially the next iteration of what Hyperliquid is targeting are options and prediction markets, right? And Ellie, you mentioned this very briefly at the beginning, but I think we've seen tremendous excitement and activity around Kalshi and Polymarket. Hyperliquid is moving into that region. And what I wanted to ask you is, do you think it can complement or defeat Polymarket and Kalshi, or is it targeting perhaps a slightly different segment of when it comes to outcome-based markets?
Sure. I think when it comes to HIP4, which is kind of the same of HIP3, but to deploy, like, as you mentioned, predictions markets,
Yeah.
I think it can be very successful. I think that as of now, my take is that I see probably Hyperliquid dominating predictions markets for the financial side of things. So for
Yeah.
people like are interested in like bidding on CPI numbers or on the other side of things, or like things heavily related to crypto, TradFi, or real world events related to it. I think
Okay.
for the rest of the markets, it's still unclear to me if Hyperliquids can compete at scale. I mean, they can compete at scale. It's more like how much time it will take and how it will go through. Because like when you trade HIP3 markets, so SpaceX, I don't know, S&P 500 and everything, like you can directly trade it through the Hyperliquid interface, and it's totally designed for that. Where I think the UX on Hyperliquid for predictions market is pretty terrible. I mean, like it fits for me because like I'm used to the interface and I've been using it for like years, so it's okay for me, you know. But for people who are more familiar with Polymarkets, which is most of the markets now when it comes to prediction markets, I think the gap in terms of UX UI is huge, and I think that Hyperliquid is not looking to improve on this. I think what they're doing is doing at UX on this and letting someone build something better on top of it. I think this is my take.
Okay.
I think that they have like most talented people and smartest people in town to build something crazy, and they didn't from like a UI UX perspective. And I think they are like intentionally like letting some margin and a gap for like builders and protocols to be
Yeah.
on top of it and have something better to compete. And I think this is how you think about like AWS. AWS is not designed to have
Yeah.
like the best UI, best UX, but people build stuff on top of it and then market it and sell it, you know?
That's a
So
great
I
example.
think on this regard, I think for financials markets, I think they can definitely compete. I think they will get over like Polymarkets for multiple reasons. I think like people like who are trading perps are more willing to, are also interested in trading prediction markets. I don't think people trading prediction markets are very focused on trading perps, maybe. I don't know. I think there is a better fit because like Hyperliquid is more advanced for more advanced users as of now, who have more capital and everything. And I think outside of financial markets, I think it's going to be tough. And this is where like Kalshi and Polymarket are the biggest. If you look
Yeah.
at the numbers, the bread and butter of Kalshi and Polymarket is sports betting, basically. And it's getting heavily regulated. And I don't think Hyperliquid is in a position to get heavily regulated when it comes to this. I mean, they don't want to have licenses and to have something specific to each country. I don't think it's in their DNA. And just for these reasons, I think it makes the predictions markets harder to access compared to Perps
Okay.
or Hyperliquid. Like you're
Yeah.
living in France or you're living in like in a lot of countries in Europe or outside of it, the outcome predictions market tab on Hyperliquid UI is not visible. Like you can't access it. Like Polymarkets, you can still access it, but you might not be able to use it, but still you can use a VPN. I mean, everybody use a VPN so they can bypass it. But so I think my take is Hyperliquid is going to be big on prediction market for finance stuff. I think for sports betting and everything, it's going to be much, much harder. And it will require anyway someone to build something unique on top of the infrastructure and the primitive to achieve something at scale, because like Hyperliquid can't really take off with this UI UX, in my opinion. This is only my opinion for now. I
I
think I
think
can't hear really.
I think I think it's a great take because I think at the end of the day, if we want to expand the pie in the digital asset space and we have only 700 million people accessing the asset class, we need to make sure that we can accommodate the interfaces and the applications at people's fingertips for moms and pops and the average Joe as well, and the older generations. So I do think I agree with you that the improvement in the UX and I would say the user experience would definitely be helpful for expanding the pie and getting to billions of people leveraging the technology. Right now, we're not there yet, and definitely it's built for a niche market, but the numbers are already speaking for themselves. We're talking about billions of dollars traded on a daily basis on some of these markets. Right now, Polymarket represents only around 4% of BTC markets in prediction markets compared to Polymarket. So only 4% against Polymarket. So there's still a room to grow for Hyperliquid and HIP4. What would be your take and your prediction if you had to give a number for, I would say, the market share of Hyperliquid against Polymarket? Right now it's 4%. Next year at the same time, tell us what would be the number if you had to guess a number, just a number.
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room that we haven't really talked about is
I
that
like that you're giving the context. Yeah, give the context and then
is that like just like HIP3 markets, third parties is going to deploy markets on HIP4. So since Hyperliquid is very neutral and anyone can take advantage of it, I think that probably maybe some HIP3 deployer will be interested in deploying HIP4 markets. I think it makes
right.
a lot of sense. I think Shoku tweeted like multiple times some emoji of like sports icons or whatever. So
Oh,
sports emojis and everything. So I think that I'm expecting personally to see TradeXYZ penetrate the HIP4 market and be also very dominant.
huh?
I'm also very, and I think they're going to be successful too. I just don't know how exactly, if it's like exotic markets, just a lot of choice, or is it like having very deep liquidity and getting agreements with like liquidity providers or people to get into it and drive the numbers up and liquidity up so it attracts more people. Or another thing that I'm considering is that like we've seen TradeXYZ like partner with Standard & Poor's for S&P
Yep.
500. They could probably do this kind of partnership for sports. Or they could do this kind of partnership for like some predictions markets on some, topics, some side of it. I think this
Mm-hmm.
is the first thing to consider, which would be very strategic. Like they could really do something very awesome. The other thing, which is to me interesting, I think it will take time, but since Hyperliquid is quite neutral, and like anyone can take advantage of infrastructure, maybe one day, maybe in the future, like casinos or like betting companies could deploy their own markets, and they would
Mm.
take a cut of it, and by doing so, they would have like a deeper distribution. Because like
Right.
if they have their own markets, it means that their users, their customers will use it, but
Right.
also it could attract people who are not using their betting platform over casino usually. So I think it's really tied to how it goes with regulation, and if it's like, because like it's a lot of money to have to stake 500k hype and deploy your markets and everything. But maybe for big
Yep.
boys at the points, this is the kind of things I would expect. I think if you have like huge expectations for HRP3 and you've seen like Hyperliquid being successful within it, I think you should be ambitious and expect such things for HR. I think we're a month away from this, but still. And when it comes to, so it's for like at the end of the year or next year, you told me?
Next year, same time, June 4th, 2027.
Hmm.
Market share for Hyperliquid in prediction markets just for Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin markets
Oh, just
against
Bitcoin markets?
yeah, just Bitcoin market. Right
No.
now it's 4%.
That's an easy question.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 70%, maybe something like that, maybe more.
All right.
I don't know.
All right. Sounds good. You're on the record, right? So we'll see. We'll see next year. I love that. This is great. We touched upon some of the risk as well to the growth of Hyperliquid. You mentioned the user experience, the fact that there are no airdrops or at least grants for entrepreneurs to be incentivized to build. What are the silver linings of these risks that you mentioned as well? Anything that the audience can take away with before we delve into some of the questions that the audience has for you?
Yeah. I think on the regulatory side of thing, so Hyperliquid created Hyperliquid Policy Center, which is doing a fantastic job. So basically, Hyperliquid created like a department funded by the foundation with like top level guys within it who are working to basically do some lobbying around Hyperliquid and having like perps available everywhere, especially within the US, because now like we're getting more and more clarity around like crypto regulation. So I think this is a huge news for the Hyperliquid ecosystem, and I think it's moving towards having Hyperliquid everywhere. And I think like it can help on getting perps available within the US and Hyperliquid perps available to the US. But the same goes with predictions market, and maybe it will also help on the predictions market side of things for the real world events or sports betting. So I think this is definitely something to consider. I think that the news around Circle and Coinbase is also awesome, because I would not imagine Circle and Coinbase really stepping into this kind of partnership and while thinking that Hyperliquid is super risky and going to zero, and it's not the future, So of course, like Circle and Coinbase working with Hyperliquid is not like something that like erase the risks, because we are in DeFi, but still I think that it gives us more confidence around it. And when it comes to maybe incentives and funding for builders and also what builders are offering, so I think personally, this is my take, I do think that we'll see a community rewards for like builders. So as you might know, 42% of the total supply is yet to be distributed to the community,
Yeah.
and it is written community, so it's really for the community. I think at the end of the day, like the supply for the community is around like 70% or a bit more,
This is
which is
enormous. Yeah.
in crypto usually it's, if it's like 30%, it is great.
Yeah, that's
So
true. Actually, on average, I would say is between 30 to 40% for the community, sometimes even less for some of the more stingy protocols.
yeah.
But jokes aside, it's true that Hyperliquid is actually, alongside Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, one of the only community-owned protocol.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we'll see an airdrop or a reward campaign or incentive for the builders. I think it's pretty
Okay.
much obvious. I think they have a lot of upside doing that, in the
Yep.
sense of like 42% of Hype FDV right now is around like 30 billions, maybe 30 billion, something like that. Yeah. So they have $30 billion of token to distribute. Of course, they have like a long-term vision. So they're not gonna distribute it like in a one part each. So I think they will probably distribute it like a bit every year, every 2 years over time. I don't know, over 10, 20 years. And I think over time they will distribute less hype, but they will be more valuable, so they can keep incentivizing a decent amount of dollars, maybe more, without giving more hype. I think this is a goal for them. But yeah, overall, I think they will incentivize builders because they could create one of the most incentivized chain ever, especially on the Hyper-EVM. And I think it would really create a huge flywheel for Hyperliquid, because I think so far, of course, builders includes Hypercore and Hyper-EVM. There are like builders on each side of it, and then both intersection. But I
So one
think that,
side,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
just for my grandmother, because she might be watching this one day. So like Hypercore really being like the trading engine layer,
Yeah.
and then the other side being more the smart contract layer. So really the marketplace for innovation on
Yeah,
Hyperliquid, right?
and to distribute it to the EVM ecosystem, which
Yeah,
is including Ethereum. So
yeah,
basically, Hyper-EVM is a bridge between the trading platform
sure.
and the smart contract platform and ecosystem that is Ethereum compatible. And so I think that if they incentivize builders on Hyper-EVM, could, with a very
Oh, wow.
slight percent of the supply, create huge rewards for builders, which would distribute it to the end user, or at least a part of it. So this way, you signal that you care about builders and that they are incentivized because like they have not been granted so far. So like you give them like a small gift, and on top of it, you give them like some supply to give away to users, maybe at some conditions or whatever. I don't know. I have no idea. This is still like my prediction. But
Yeah,
this way, Hyper-EVM would be so incentivized that it would attract all DeFi users. And even like for people like, we've seen Morpho and Aave and like large protocols really scaling, like even Sky and everything, scaling a lot on Ethereum mainnets, and also on Base and everything. And there's a lot of capital that still is sitting outside of Hyperliquid, like a huge amount. And I
yeah,
think that Hyperliquid needs to also get those people, not only on the trading side, pure trading side of thing, but also on the DeFi side of thing. So when it comes to vault infrastructure,
yeah,
savings protocol, savings products, yield
yeah,
product, and very innovative stuff that can be built. So the incentives could be like some upside for the builders and for the community. And I think at the end of the day, it will end up like having more users to trade and more revenues and more fees, which end up
yeah,
being more buyback, etc. So there is a huge flywheel because builders are also very aligned and connecting the product to having more pressure to buy hype.
exactly.
Another side of thing I think is that with AI booming, I think it makes it way easier to build. And I think blockchain, when you connect it to AI, and also you can connect Hyperliquid's API, because Hyperliquid's an API that you can connect to trade and access a lot of features. And if you combine all of that, Hyper-EVM plus Hypercore using API and this, I think you can create awesome products. And Hyperliquid is really providing a unique playfield to the ecosystem that is a playfield that we've never really had access to. So what I mean by that is that on a single chain, you really never had very liquid spot and Perps markets, in addition to predictions markets, in addition to an EVM and a layer one
Yeah,
and like builder codes that you can build on top of to monetize. Like you have plenty of features that are accessible on the same venue and same place. And this way you can create very new products that were not possible before. So this plus AI, I think, will create a new wave of products. And I think Hyperliquid will be definitely the venue where you will see more and more innovation, because this is where you see the most potential in terms of innovation. Like what you can do on Ethereum, like on the technical side of things, you can probably do it on Hyper-EVM. But what is achieved on the trading side of things on Hyperliquid is not something you can achieve on Ethereum. So you have the best of both worlds.
both worlds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you it makes sense, the incentivization, is obviously not just to make you happy, but to build out the ecosystem and have exciting products that aren't necessarily copycats of what we have in other ecosystems or other venues. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Leo, I wish we could have you here the whole afternoon and the whole day. Maybe you should pay us a visit over here in Zurich. Um, but
For
I
sure,
think
for
it's a
sure.
good time to maybe head over to the community crowdsource questions. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yep, let's do it. Let's spend the next 60 seconds on the fire chats or the questions that the audience has for us. I think we picked some of the best questions. So thank you so much for the audience, for those listening now. So, Max, go ahead. You picked
Sure.
very awesome questions. I think 4 of them. Fire away.
Exactly.
Eo, you've got 60 seconds.
Yeah, so, some of them, maybe slightly overlap with what was already talked about. Thanks again for everyone for posing your questions, and we hope you stayed for the whole chat to get them answered.
Here, here.
Let's go. Is he planning for Hyperliquid's outcome markets to fall more in the normie category, so things like sports betting, elections? Or do you think that there will be a more sophisticated financial product similar to what Interactive Brokers is doing?
I think it's gonna be like for most like sophisticated actors, players for
Yeah.
now. Probably like normies in the future, but this is not something I'm seeing in the very short term.
Yeah. And I think we said that the focus likely on outcome markets would be more on the financial side of things, also
Yeah.
due to maybe the UI and UX. On the second side, second question, Hyperliquid has successfully expanded from Perps into 3, now HIP4. What is the next primitive that could bring in an entirely new category of users into the ecosystem rather than just serving existing traders better? And then there's a follow-up, given that progress, what do you see as the next major innovation?
To me, so I don't know if it's something that can be entirely done on current primitives or if it's something that needs, or if we need to adjust the infrastructure to do it. But I think the next step is very obvious. Next step, it is tokenized equities, commodities, indices. And I think this is something that can really attract a lot of people. People who are not really traders, maybe more investors. I think this is like a category that would really fit well, because like if you use Hyperliquid, it's more like trading. It's more like very niche. This could change everything, attract new users. And I think it has a lot of upside to Hyperliquid. Not especially in terms of revenue, because I don't think this is where you get a lot of revenue. But still,
Yeah.
in terms of liquidity, distribution, acquisition, I think it's the next step.
Thank you. So third, with a significant, you would love this question, with a significant portion of Hype's supply still reserved for community rewards, what criteria do you think will matter the most for a potential season 2 airdrop? Is it trading volume, staking, Hyper-EVM activity, etc., etc.?
So I think it will be season 3 or 4, something like this now. But
Okay.
I think what matters the most is paying fees, HIP3 and HIP4. I think every new primitive they build is something they want to focus on and to have growth on, especially since we've seen they reduced fees on certain markets and primitives to get more traction. So I think what they're willing to do is scale this. And so in order to get this to scale, you want to incentivize people participating to it. So I think paying fees anyway is the baseline, because like it's very hard to estimate your contribution if you didn't pay fees, because you could just wash trade and does it really add value in and HIP3, HIP4 activity. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question from the public is, why doesn't Hyperliquid improve the platform's UX? Using HIP4 is challenging. How can they expect to attract more users without improving the UX?
I think
We talked about this.
we really need people to build awesome product on top of it. And just something I missed for the previous question is portfolio margin. Portfolio margin is like a huge primitive and feature, and I think it will get very well rewarded. And I think it gives huge upside for more trading fees and more volumes overall. So, but when it comes to the UX, I think Hyperliquid is really giving the tooling for people to build awesome stuff. So we just need cool people to build awesome stuff, and this is personally something I'm pursuing to build like the best products on Hyperliquid. So hopefully this is something I can help with.
So maybe if you're a front-end web developer, maybe it's worth sending over your CV as well throughout the Hype ecosystem, given that, UI is not been their forte as of late. But that's one of the only things I can give them a hit with. So yeah. Any
For
other
sure.
questions you guys have that you just want to pose or?
No, I think it's been great. Leo or CryptoPicsou, you've been amazing. It's been phenomenal to be able to get to know you, get to know your story and your perspective on Hyperliquid, the future of Hyperliquid, as well as the risk and how to mitigate those risks. I'm sure the audience is going to really enjoy listening to that and hearing your perspective. Can't wait to have you back to talk more about the evolution, to definitely, hopefully not calling you out on the market share of Hyperliquid against Polymarket next year. You've got 365 days left, so let's see. We're going to keep a close eye on the progress around that. But we want to thank you so much on behalf of Max, myself, and the whole 21 Shares team. It's been awesome. Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate you guys having me here. And yeah, really looking forward to having other conversation about other topics, because like there are like so many things to touch and to tap into. So yeah, thank you for that, guys.
The
Thank you very
pleasure
much.
was all ours. And yeah, if the volumes are not 70% of Polymarket by next year, you owe us another episode either way. All jokes aside, thanks especially also to our audience, to our viewers, and to our community. We hope today you enjoyed. We hope that you'll be here as well for follow-up sessions. We're going to go deeper into Hyperliquid in a couple of sessions as well. So maybe a teaser for you guys here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you're watching this on YouTube. And we'll see you at the next time. Thank you, guys.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye bye.